Hello and welcome to the next part of the JavaScript challenge. Today we're going to be doing Memoize. And so Memoize is pretty much a function that if it gets called, you want to store the results. And if you already have the results, then you want to return the results. Otherwise, you want to run the function and store the results. So it's ensuring that you're not doing repeated work, and it's super common in DP problems and just in all kinds of algorithms. And so let's figure out how we could do this. So what we want to do is we want to return a memoized version of a function. So what we want to do is we want to make a cache initially. We can make it in two places. I'm just going to make it here. Now we want to return a function that takes some args. And I'm just going to draw it in arrow format. I think I've talked about like functions versus arrow format and so on. And so now, and because this is JavaScript, in the cache, you can't just like store a tuple as a key or something like I was doing in Python. You actually have to get a string. And so there's two ways to do this. So one thing you could do is this function that takes args. If you just use args, it's an array. So what you could say is you could say this JSON. This is a method that's really common. And what this will do is this will take your object and it will stringify it, and then you can use it as a key. So you can actually call it on args, and because args is an array, you don't have to worry about the keys being like, you know, appended together or something, right? So if you had something like 1 versus 10 this would give you two different things because of this comma. So you already have a separator. So essentially what this will do is this will take this array and make it a string, and the key, you're not going to have any issue with the keys being like just appended together where you would if you just appended two numbers together. And so essentially this will give you a key, and this method is really common and really useful. And so then once we have a key, we can just say if key in cache, kind of like in Python, then we can return cache key, right? Pretty much just like in Python. So if the key is in the dictionary, let's just return that cache value. Otherwise, we can just say cache key equals, and now we actually want to run the function on the args and we want to spread them out. So we can do it like this, and then we can return that. And so I think I've talked about like the rest and spread parameter enough, but yeah, essentially, you know, if you don't know how many arguments you're going to take, you can use the rest parameter. It'll give you a bunch of arguments, and then you can use args to get the array of those arguments, and if you want to spread them out again, you use ... So I think that's one way of doing it. I think that should work. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. Now there's another way of doing it. Instead of doing this JSON.stringify, you can manually do it. And so what you can do is you can say, like const key equals, I think you actually want to do a list probably. And then you could say, you can manually go through the arguments. So you could say like for let arg of args. Let's just add something to the key, right? So key dot push arg. So you can manually push the arg into the arguments if you don't want to use JSON.stringify. And this will essentially make an array of arguments. And then you can just, let me think about this here. I think this will actually just work like this. So if we actually do something like this, I think this should work, but let's give it a go. So key equals args. Actually, it's going to be key.join, and let's just join it on this. So we do want to make a separator symbol now. Let's see if that works. I'm curious. Okay, assignment to constant variable. Okay, let's just change this to a let. Okay, so that actually does work, which is interesting. Yeah, so essentially we are creating an array of strings. Or sorry, we're creating an array of args, which can be whatever type, and then you're essentially just joining that array with this. You want to use an array when you push your arguments, because strings are immutable, just like in Python. So you don't want to keep adding to a string because it'll have to like remake the string. Now, what you could also do is probably do something like JSON.stringify the arg. That's probably a good thing to do, right? Because you're like, that's probably better format. But I think when you do the join, and your arguments in this case are able to be converted to a string, then it works like that. So I think you can do this. And I think here you also only have like integers or something, so it's okay. But essentially something like this would be fine too. But yeah, essentially I would probably just get into the habit of using JSON.stringify. I think it's probably the best way of turning objects into strings. It's pretty efficient. Now, I think what you could also do is you can just write toString. I think that'll work as well. I believe. I don't recall the format of toString like off the top of my head. But yeah, I would say stick with this JSON.stringify. So this does work, but I'm not sure if this will work if the argument is like an object or something. So I wouldn't recommend just calling it on arg directly. But you could do the JSON.stringify version. It's totally fine. And essentially does the same thing. But yeah, if you're given like args like this, I would just recommend using JSON.stringify. If you're given arguments that are in some other format, you do have to make sure that, yeah, you don't have this case, right, where like the first argument is 101, second number is 1, or you could have these two. You want to make sure these don't evaluate to the same thing. You don't just like append them together. It would actually be like 101 and 1, but yeah, you get my point. So if you have these two arguments, if you just take the arguments and you append them together without a separator here, then you're going to have issues, because this can happen where like it'll treat it as the same key where you have two different arguments. And then there's some other efficiencies you can make, like if your first and second argument are your second and first argument in reverse, you can do some stuff. But essentially, this is kind of what you want to be doing for memoization. I think it's a pretty good technique. So learn to use JSON.stringify, and I think that's the best habit for it. Okay, so I will see you in the next one. I think that's all I wanted to share in this one. Thanks for watching.